to the new form of the podcast.
Today we have Beau Simmons with us. Welcome.
Thank you.
This is our first video podcast at my house. So we're out here. It's hot.
We're out here.
It's typical Texas and August weather.
Yes.
Yeah. We are
Torture time with Ella
we're
and
torturing Beau out here.
Yeah.
I'm used to it. It feels great.
Are you excited? How do you feel? Are you nervous?
No, not at all. I always enjoy just coming on and talking about. I feel like I don't have much of a story, but I'm always happy to
You
come on different
definitely do.
podcasts.
Everybody has a
Definitely
story.
Beau, can you tell us a little bit about where you're from,
Mhm.
how you got to this point?
Yeah. So kind of going all back, I grew up in a small town called Joshua Tree, California. Most people know of it just from vacationing there, but I'm actually someone who's born and raised there. Mom and dad still live in the same house I was kind of growing up in. And then spent my years going through high school, barely graduated with a pretty low GPA, moved out of my house when I was 17. Knew that I wanted to do photography at a pretty early age, but kind of went through different things of interest. Like, I wanted to be a tattoo artist and did that for like 2 years. And then when I was even younger than that, I was racing motocross. Like I was into like racing dirt bikes and all that. And got too hurt, and I knew that like the creative field was something I wanted to be in, but I didn't really develop the understanding of wanting to be a photographer until my family and I took our first trip to Hawaii when I was 16, and I kind of picked up like a little camera and took photos of waterfalls, sunsets, you name it, and kind of fell in love with like photographing landscapes and real life stuff. And then fast forward to, I think 20 years old, I attempted to go to like an art school in LA. And learn photography and then minor in filmmaking opposite. I wanted to go and major in filmmaking and minor in photography.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it came to a point where I realized how much money I was spending just to go to an art school and learning how to like, open up Photoshop and the most basic kind of mundane tasks that I've already taught myself, and basically just dropped out. I left with like a 4.0 for my like first semester. And, convinced myself that I wasn't dumb, that I can get somewhat of an education.
I also dropped out of college, so.
Yeah.
I dropped out of high school.
Yeah. I mean, I barely.
We have such a similar thing though, because then I was determined to prove that I actually was smart to people. So I like went to community college and then went to USC and then got like a master's degree.
Yeah.
Kind of, I do nothing with it now, but I proved it
But you got
to
it,
everybody.
Well, that was kind of the whole point of it was like, I graduated high school with like a 1.6 GPA.
Yeah.
I didn't get to walk because I basically failed the class my senior year and had to go to summer school to finish that class. So I got my diploma mailed. And it was kind of one of those things where I knew I wasn't dumb. I just didn't apply myself.
Yeah.
I didn't care about high school or school in general. So when it came to like putting myself into something that I wanted to do, like a creative art school or learning photography, I kind of went up till I got a 4.0. And then around that time, I knew that I was going to be like, $150,000 in debt. And I was like, I really don't want to be paying this off, well into my 40s and 50s. And so I just decided, hey, after speaking with some mentors of mine that were kind of like, school is great. I know you've already invested some money into this, but the industry kind of works based on your performance and based on who you know.
So true.
It was kind of convincing to just leave and start over fresh and try as hard as I could to just do it on my own. And so that's when I pursued doing fashion photography for nearly 10 years.
That's actually not an easy industry to break into, though. How did you get your first job?
So long story short, at the time, so I never lived in LA besides when I went to school for a few months. I then moved south to Laguna Beach, and like talk about leaving school, no money, and then moving to one of the most expensive cities in the country. It was kind of like this hard challenge where I was like, I'm going to figure out a way. I was working for, there was an old skateboard store called Active. I was working for Active.
That sounds familiar. I feel like.
So I was like selling shoes. I even sold shoes to Travis Barker one time when he came in.
Sorry, there was a mistake.
Claim to fame.
It was kind of funny. So like, worked at a skate shop just to pay the bills and whatnot. I was sleeping, sharing a bedroom with a buddy of mine where I was paying his dad like $200 to like share a room with him. And then it kind of came down to a girl that I was dating at the time was a model. And so her and I would like go on camping trips and take little trips outside of her work. And I was taking photos of like, back then on Instagram, it was pretty famous to like, put these little people out on the edge of like Yosemite.
Yeah.
Like these big grand kind of landscape scenes. and this lifestyle like camping movement. And so I was photographing that stuff and wanting to do like the whole like Patagonia stuff and whatnot. But I actually got a message. This is like early like direct message days, but like it was Aeropostale.
Yes, I worked for them.
Yeah, so they reached out to me, and it was the first job, and they were like, "Hey, we want you to do what you're doing. We're gonna pay you. Can you take a trip through Yosemite, and we're gonna hire a couple models to like come with you, guys and girls, and just photograph them camping, hiking, kind of enjoying it, and we'll pay you like $3,000." And back then, I was like, "Dude, are you kidding me?"
Right.
And I was
Were
like,
you
"Yeah."
freaking out?
And I like somehow got the girlfriend who I was dating at the time hired on for that job. And
I do remember them paying well for. I think that was like I got that job and I was like, oh, okay, all right,
I'm rich.
Yeah. So it was this weird kind of thing
Instagram.
Instagram, yeah. It was like, and this was, I mean, we're talking maybe 3 years into Instagram.
Damn.
It's like 3-4 years in. So this is back when it was just a photo app.
It was right around the time it started becoming commodifiable, though.
Yeah, and companies were just catching on of like, hey, if we share photos of our campaigns, like there's photographers and creatives that are on here. And I mean, there's probably still millions of people back then, but it was one of those things where it was just formed. I don't even think Facebook bought it yet. Maybe they did, but it was still in the early kind of phases of Instagram.
It's wild because it's wild to think back and realize how much it really disrupted the modeling industry, the photography industry, like any of the advertising industry. I worked in casting like way back in the day in LA, and I was getting out just as they were starting to ask people like, what's your follower count? You know what I mean? Like that was starting to become like a thing that mattered. It was wild. Yeah, so that was my first job. And then obviously because I did Aeropostale and they loved the images, you know, they kind of hired me on a retainer. They would call me up every like 3 or 4 months. I'd go out and shoot something else. And then American Eagle came to me. I did American Eagle. And then from there, it's kind controversial at the moment. Yes, I agree. I'm in support of it. Yeah. I love those old kind of like vintage. It's completely the take on the Brooke Shields Calvin Klein campaign.
Yep. Yeah, and it's
which that was also controversial because she was like 16.
Well, that was controversial because she was like very young.
Yeah,
that was.
Yeah,
I think. I mean, I'm totally removed from it now, but like the whole fashion world has always been controversial.
Sorry, I asked Noah to bring me bug spray. I'm kidding.
Hi, Noah.
There we go. We need some bug spray.
I mean, that got me already too.
It's kind of what we need if we're doing like Texas porch sessions.
Guys, this is as real as it gets.
Can I get that after you?
Yeah.
I just killed one on my leg.
I just saw it. You were talking. I saw it buzzing around and like eating me. I was like,
oh, I'm sure I'll get one on like my ear or something and just ignore it.
Sponsorship.
Sponsor us bug spray.
Of Repel.
Repel bug spray. Super toxic.
Yeah.
Will probably kill us.
Wow.
But
So
we'll not get bit by mosquitoes.
We'll at least survive this podcast.
There we go.
But it was this weird chain of events to where, and I'm not talking kind of one after another, but this was kind of years where it was like Aeropostale, American Eagle, and then I was doing stuff with like Converse. And then it kind of transitioned to where when I was kind of doing the more commercial lifestyle brands like that, then I started, you know, getting closer to subjects and shooting more portraiture and more studio and artistic stuff. And then that's when I started getting like the jobs that were like, you know, campaigns for free people. And then I did Marc Jacobs and did different stuff like that. But yeah, that was so long ago for me. I mean, that was almost a decade ago and I did it for almost a decade.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's crazy.
I was young when I started. I think I was 21 and I'm going to be 36 in like 5-6 months.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also in the fashion industry and I know how it can be inspiring to get creative, you know, and do fun shoots with people, but the industry can definitely be draining or just uninspiring, you know? Is that kind of why you left?
Yes, I think it was also because, and I've been honest about this up front before, but I think as a young man who grew up in a small town, you know, in my terms was kind of a nobody, like, you know, I had friends and all that. I wasn't like really popular in high school, but I got along with everybody. But it's like, you know, when you're in high school, I was this young man who wanted to date the prettiest girls, never got them. And then all of a sudden it's like, you then get thrown into this world where you're around like the prettiest people, like male and female.
Yeah.
To where it's not necessarily like I only wanted to date models. That's not really what I'm getting at. It was more so that you're surrounded by that.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, you get it, like outside of doing fashion
100%,
events
yeah.
or outside of doing campaigns and whatnot, you'd have to go to events. And that was like Tuesday night, there's this going on. Then Wednesday night, there's this showing. Then Thursday night, this brand's coming into town and putting on this big event. So you're almost showing face, but you're around that industry where it starts to become very shallow. And I kind of become what I'm surrounded by very easily.
Yeah.
And so even then,
That's
as
normal.
20, 21 years old, I was just kind of acting like, you know, my shit didn't stink, lack of a better term.
Right.
And I started to lose myself as a man a little bit and become very shallow. And then it became this turning point where I was like, I enjoy this. I'm making decent money, but this is not how I was raised.
Yeah.
And I was kind of seeing like, you know, my friends and family were kind of calling it out a little bit. And I realized that I was like, I think there's something more that I want to be documenting.
Right.
Like,
When you start to realize, like, is this actually what I want to do with my life?
Mhm.
Because the people in that industry, you start to feel like it's the most important thing in the world.
Yep.
Like the people really treat it like it's life or death sometimes, the shoots and getting everything right and getting the right model and this and that. And then even just doing casting, I started to have the realization like, this is not actually how I want to spend my life.
Yeah.
Like it's not important at all at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yet everybody's stressing everybody out like it totally is. And that's just
Yeah.
not necessary, you know?
Well, and I think it works for some people, but I think back then, and it's still probably today, like you can only relate to other creatives. So you're kind of stuck with dating people in that industry, whether I was dating, if it was a model or it was like, say it was like a stylist or a makeup artist, it was somebody that was tied into that world to where then, you know, everybody's okay with it. But from a lot of the females that I were dating, they were okay with it at first. And then a year or two later, when like emotions are high and like, you know, the love word is being thrown around, it's like they were then like, I don't know if I feel comfortable with you shooting females anymore. And you're like, well,
Wow.
I was already doing this, you know, before I met you. And it just became one of those things where I was seeing kind of every relationship like crash and burn after 6 months to a year. There was nothing that was like longing. And obviously this sounds like I'm putting the industry down, and I'm not. It's just, this is my perspective and like what I went through.
I think it's fairly accurate. I don't think there's many people in that
Yeah.
industry who could say, I mean, some people might enjoy it more than others, but I don't think you could say that it isn't that. And that oftentimes people are kind of looking for the bigger, better thing. You know what I mean? Like, is there a better photographer today? Is there a better model today? Is there a better, you know what I mean? Like, it's very, like, LA in general. My God.
Yeah. And you know, the funny thing is like, I loved LA. I loved New York more.
I do love LA too. I love it. It's got a piece of my heart forever. I lived there 20 years.
Well, when it came to like doing fashion stuff, I loved traveling to New York for work.
Yeah.
Because at least I met like some real people. And not to say like everybody in LA is not, but like the thing that I realized is that people that are from LA were the most real. It was the people that were kind of moving into LA that maybe in their mind they were kind of like me, where they like felt like they grew up in a small town where kind of a nobody, and then moved to this city where now all of a sudden it's like this booming, like I need to make connections, I need a network.
Yeah.
It changes you.
It definitely
Really
definitely does.
fast.
Yeah, and there's something about the energy of LA because it's attracted so many people, and maybe these people were like the hottest person in their little hometown. You know what I mean? And they
Yeah.
all migrate to
It
this
is pretty
one
crazy.
spot,
Yeah.
and everybody's gorgeous.
There's
and
so many hot people in LA.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the first time my mom visited me when I moved out there. I was like 22 or something. And she was
Yeah.
like, "Where do all the old people walk? Is there like an
Yeah.
underground tunnel? Is there like
Yeah.
where's all the ugly old people?"
No,
'Cause I don't see
really.
any.
Like I hadn't been in a while, and I went back and I just went to like a local coffee shop, and I was like, oh
Damn.
my
And all the
God,
people, yeah.
like wow.
Yeah, that it has no short of.
Yeah.
But you become jaded. Like you
that's
just
what I mean.
see beautiful, like,
Yeah.
and not even just like it's like styled to a T, like hair done,
Yes.
makeup done, or like, you know, the Hailey Bieber like natural. It was just like everybody is like to a T.
Yeah, and there'd be a trend that would come around, and then everybody would kind of jump on that, and everybody would change, and they all started to look alike. And I think
Yeah.
to fast forward, I think it just came down to me one night. I was on a ranch. I got invited to like a guest ranch, and at the time, I didn't know anything about cowboys.
Wait. So you had a moment where you decided you were done with that.
So not yet, quite yet.
Okay.
It was so I was going through a breakup at the time, and
Always a good learning experience.
like anybody does, you know, like the woman that I was with at the time, her and I planned to go up to this ranch for like 4 or 5 days. And I think like maybe 3 weeks prior, I ended things. And then it was kind of like that at the time where I was like, well, I'm not going to give up this trip. Like, I'm going to go up there. And it was in Northern California, like just above Lake Tahoe. And I went up to this guest ranch, and it was like almost to Halloween. It was kind of like off season for them, where they didn't have like many guests staying there. And so when I got there, I was the only one, and I ended up staying like almost 2 weeks. And so I literally just like stayed in one of the extra cabins. I got to know some of like the guys that worked there that used to cowboy on ranches back when they were younger, and now maybe just retired in the mountains and are just having a job related to horses where they can get paid a little bit more. And they were the ones that were kind of like, this is kind of just a guest ranch. You're seeing what horses look like. You're seeing what trail rides look like and all that. But you need to go photograph like the real deal stuff. And I think then was when I went back to Southern California and Laguna. I was still doing some like odd jobs in fashion here and there, but it was kind of a turning point in my mind where I was like, I want to photograph, like, lack of a better term again, like real people that have these like stories that like nobody's ever heard, and people that might be feeding America that don't get the attention that they deserve. And it came to a point where then on my off time, like every weekend I was driving, 12 plus hours to go to different states and go out to smaller family ranches. And I started there and, kind of photographing these families and individuals. And then it kind of led up to years and years of doing that, to where then I was kind of granted permission to come out to these bigger heritage ranches. And then it just became a full-time thing where then, I knew that I wanted to sell my work and do fine art, but it was kind of this whole, I think, year that I did that. And then I finally just kind of cold turkey overnight, gave up fashion. I quit all my contracts. I finished the jobs that I needed to do, and then just immediately like reinvested into going out and documenting things that were coming out of my own bank account. Cause at that time I wasn't making any money going out to these ranches. So I was making money in Laguna Beach, I found art galleries that were down there, and I knew that I wanted to sell my art one day. So I started working for art galleries because I wanted to learn the business from the inside out. And so I was like, well, I can make money off sales, and then I can use that money to travel and photograph ranches. And that's kind of what I did for about 3 or 4 years.
Did you have like a point in time where you're like, am I actually going to be able to pay my bills? Like, did that factor into the equation?
Every other month.
Yeah.
Yeah. There was times where I've always been a pretty frugal man. I've never really spent a lot of my money like crazy, but it was just still those times where, I was living in like I always had roommates, to live in Laguna. It was like a 2-bedroom, 2-bath, like a condo, and that was still like $3,600. And back then, we're talking 8 years ago.
Right.
It was a lot of money. And so, to split that in half, I'd have to kind of work in sales and make that money, and then kind of be frugal with, if I'm traveling on the road, I was like camping outside my car, or I was sleeping in like a bunkhouse, or just sleeping wherever I could during those times when I was going out to ranches and not really spending money on like expensive hotels and whatnot. But there was many nights of those like top ramen days of eating top ramen and fried bologna sandwiches and all that.
I've spent so much more of my life being poor than having money. I don't think it ever kind of, I was raised like middle class, you know what I mean? But then I've been working since I was probably 15 and moved out when I was 18, and then supported myself ever since. So I wasn't like I could afford my own studio apartment, whatever, but it was always month to month until not that long ago. And I don't think that frugality has left me.
Yeah.
Hence my 2014
Same.
Honda.
Yeah.
I can't I don't know. There's still like a lack mentality. We talk about this a lot. Like and in creative industries, you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from.
No.
Always. Like, how do you deal with, does that give you anxiety, or are you comfortable now?
I'm comfortable now. And I like the dog. He's just keeping us company.
Are you going to lay down?
I would say I'm comfortable now, and thank God for that, because it's one of those things where it's like you said, I'm not promised an income. It's not a 9 to 5. So the reality is there's two sides of it. There's one where I feel like if I stop working, someone's going to pass me by. There's that reality where I'm a very hard worker, and I'm very hard on myself, where I'm always trying to be the hardest working one in the room, at least in my field. And so I know that if it's late nights and I have to balance in a now marriage, and I have to balance everything else in life, I'm still trying to keep up and working towards, I'm not promised money. What I do at home to work is not going to necessarily promise me money, but it might help push the business. And so then it's kind of, me establishing relationships with new galleries. And so like, I've got 7 galleries now in the US, but those galleries have multiple locations. So it's more like we have about 14 or 15 locations that have my art in them. but you're not promised to sell every day. So it's like, even if you have that much out there, that's taken me 5 or 6 years to build that, it still comes with, you've built these different revenue streams, but you're still living like the last paycheck I got was my last.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how you treat it. And it's that mentality of kind of being like, okay, this month was great. I made a great decent amount of money, but I'm not just going to go spend it and treat myself with it.
Totally.
You know,
I
and there's
still feel like that. Yeah.
I don't take vacations. Like, I mean, my wife and I are taking our honeymoon, 6 months after our wedding coming up this fall. And that's the first probably vacation where I'm not bringing a camera and it's not for work in over 10 years. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like my vacations, if people see I travel, like I'm not saying that my travel isn't fun, but it is work,
Right,
and there's money that goes into it. It's not like I'm kind of sitting on a beach having a pina colada,
Right.
Yeah.
enjoying my time.
So when you first started, did Cowboys accept you, or
Yeah, what was
were
that
they
first
like,
ranch
"Who's
job
this
like?"
guy?
I think initially it was like, who's this guy? We know that he's coming from like Southern California, because obviously I'm driving like this, like I was driving like a 2008 like Toyota Matrix.
Yeah.
Like this, we call it the egg because it was like this white car and it had
The
no
most
hubcaps.
anti-cowboy car
Oh.
you could possibly drive.
Anti-cowboy car, had no hubcaps like every other Matrix you
And
see.
California plates.
California plates. And I show up on a ranch and like the guys are laughing, and like, I take criticism pretty well. I'm just like laughing, teasing myself because I am a foreigner in this
Right.
industry. I'm an outsider coming in, and I will always tell myself that that's what I am. But it was one of those things where I think over time, as my name kind of got out there, or as those ranches called other ranches to kind of give me, recommendations of the next place to go to, they would always spread like, hey, he's a good guy. He's learning. Like, he's not really just a photographer coming out and taking photos. Like, he wants to learn. And there was times where I knew that if I went into this industry that I wanted to like get my hands dirty and learn, because the more that I got to learn about it, the better my photos would turn out. I could learn I could learn how to read a horse's body language. I could learn like when those moments of when they're bringing, calves through a chute or through a gate, of what to look for.
Okay, wait, I have to chime in.
Yeah.
Modeling, because I do a lot of Western shoots, and 95% of the time, the whole crew does not know how to act around horses. So they're asking me to do things, or like shoving cameras in, the face and being like, oh, can you sit backwards while I like swing this reflector around? Like,
You're like, no.
So that totally makes sense, that the more you learned about horses, you're making the people more comfortable, the animals.
Yeah, that's important.
Yeah.
Just safety. I mean, my God.
I probably learned the hard way, probably like most other photographers that are kind of coming into this industry and photographing it, where I had ideas that I thought were cool. And then I was corrected really fast of like, hey, that's not natural. Like, we wouldn't do that with a horse.
100%.
We wouldn't do this. We wouldn't do that. But I never pushed back. I trusted their vision and their word, and was like, okay, then tell me where I need to be at this moment if I want to capture X, Y, Z. They would say, then be here.
Right.
And so I always trusted their word. And my goal was, every time I left a ranch, I at least wanted to earn their trust or respect, and maybe get a second invitation if I was lucky enough. And so that was my whole mindset, was shoot what you want when it's appropriate, but make sure that you're doing justice to these people, and you're not just trying to selfishly capture what you want, whether it's for monetary value or it's just because you're trying to like capture it how you think it would be done. And that was a big learning curve. But it was one of those things where I learned really quick. And then I think the more I went on, it was almost like every ranch was giving me a new set of tools to learn. So like one ranch would say, you're going to get on horseback today because we can't drive you out in a pickup. And I was just thrown on horseback, had no idea. I knew how to pull left and right, and that was it. And like back to stop. And I got bucked off many times. There was times I had to change film like while I'm riding, and that was a whole learning curve.
Oh my gosh.
There would be times where there's been ranches that I've gone out to so many times where they've given me the same horse that I've worked in a round pen before we go out. I then got to learn how to drive a truck and trailer by getting keys thrown to me and saying, back this trailer up onto the shipping, chutes. And
that's so.
Again, it was like, you're nervous and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm freaking out inside, but I'm going to stay calm, because if they have trust in me, then I know I can figure this out.
Yeah.
And you do that for so many years, to where I've always said like, I'll never be a cowboy. But I've learned how to maybe like maintain and kind of keep up with them when I go out and take photos, to where at least I know that I'm not going to get in the way, And I know that I can at least leave like learning a thing or two each time.
So, do you say you're never going to be a cowboy?
Mhm.
So, do you struggle with imposter syndrome, having not grown up in the lifestyle, but now being in it?
I think I struggle with imposter syndrome in other areas where it's more like when people compliment my work, I still think my work sucks. And it's that idea of like, I always want it to be better, or I always have a vision in my head of how I'm going to capture something and it doesn't come out that way, but everybody else likes it. That's where I struggle with, the cowboy thing. Not really, because I think I have so much respect and admiration for the people that live it and breathe it and grew up in it. Where I know that people have like kind of told me like, hey, you can be like, you can learn this trade and you can go into it full time. But the reality is that I'm a photographer.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, my job is to document what they're doing, not necessarily just play dress up and try and do what they're doing. It's mostly that I can learn how to work horses, and I would probably consider myself more of a horseman. I can swing a rope. I can help, brand cattle. I can do all that stuff. But going back, at the end of the day, I'm a photographer. And so it's that kind of balance that I always kind of strive to teach other people, like, boots and, a hat is just a tool, anybody can wear it. I'm not really a gatekeeper with that stuff, but you have to kind of respect where it comes from and at least acknowledge those that do it every day.
So, how do you honor it how do you honor it and not just capitalize on it?
It's a good question. I think there's a balance of, everybody that I've worked with knows that I have to keep my lights on. They know that I sell artwork. And sometimes the downside is that I understand that not everybody can afford my work. I understand that I have positioned myself in kind of more of a higher caliber of artworks that are going like museums or art galleries or art fairs. And I did that on purpose because I knew that there was nobody in those areas that were photographing cowboys. So my whole thought process was, there's plenty of people that are selling prints online. There's plenty of people like, dude, some of like the ranchers' wives that are photographers are amazing because they're out there every day photographing the real stuff, and they're selling prints, and they're keeping, the lights on and putting money on the table on the side. And so I didn't want to step on their toes. It was like, I want them to do that. But there's nobody in this high end kind of world that's like taking the cowboy like ethos and showing what that looks like to the rest of the world and to some of like, the wealthiest people that are being fed by these people. So kind of going back to your question, I think it's been more like, as long as I can go out to each ranch and photograph, their families and do right by them, earn their trust, earn their respect. Maybe it's getting in the saddle, it's branding, it's helping them out, and them understanding that like, some of these images are going to go in books, or they're going to go into a gallery where I'm going to sell them and make money. There's also been times where, I will pay those cowboys, or I'll send them prints to their family. So I've always been trying to think of ways of how can I provide more to them rather than just requesting more for myself. The younger guys love it because, all of them have like social media, they all have like a Snapchat and Instagram. So if they're single or whatnot, it's kind of like their way of like putting it out there and kind of showing off. The older guys are a little bit more hesitant because they've been doing this for so long, and they've probably had many of us photographers come out and they just get over it because, they want to just get a job done.
Yeah.
My whole, I guess, way of like persuading them has been, you have family and you never know when we're going to pass. And I get the reality of like, I'm the same person. I don't like having my photo taken, even though I'm behind the lens. But it's one of those things where your family might want something to look back on.
So true.
And they might want that moment that you're hesitant on, which I get. But with me shooting film, I'm not wasting time bursting like dozens of shots and spending 5 minutes to set them up. It's like I find a spot before I even go ask them. And I literally like say, yeah, just turn, look at me, boom, take one shot, done. And they're like, that was fast. And I'm like, yeah, I don't want to waste time. I know I kind of saw in my mind what that would look like. And at least I can now send you home with an image, that maybe your family will frame or that they'll always have.
I'm sure their wives appreciate it.
They always do. Because
of course.
The cowboys don't have Instagrams, but their wives always do. And so when I post these photos, sometimes, you don't always get to get everyone's contact information. Most of these photos I send to the ranch manager who okayed me to come out. And I just ask, politely if they can spread these photos to the rest of the guys. But as I'm sharing these photos, I'll have a lot of like, personal messages that come in from the wives that are like, hey, that's my husband, or that was my son. Can you send me this photo? And I love when I get that, because then I can, find their mailing address, or, if it's just an email, I'll send them the photo, or I'll print it and send it to them. And so I love that, because it's usually the wives or the girlfriends that are always on top of finding that stuff out.
Of course.
Yep.
Yeah. Cowboys do one thing. Cowboy.
Yep.
You know what I mean? So I was thinking about when you were talking about all the details and like how that captures it. How do you think, I feel like I'm so non-present so much of the time, and like that, being a photographer and just getting to sit there and notice all the little things around you, like, do you think that spills over into your life? Are you better at being present and noticing details? Like, do you think there's any connection there, or is that like specific to photography and you're just like everybody else once the camera's off and on your phone and like not present?
No. So at home, yes, I'm guilty of this, where like my wife and I will have talks where it's like, hey, after 6 p.m., I try and shut it off, just to value our time together. But when I'm with cowboys and I'm on ranches, I'm like fully invested into them at the time, because the reality is that most of these places I go out to are so remote, you don't have cell service, which is a blessing.
Yeah.
Because then you're forced to like sit at a table and have dinner together and play cards or read a book, or
so nice. My dream.
you kind of go,
Seriously.
you almost reset. And it's this weird feeling of being out there knowing that like the rest of the world is moving 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you're just living in that moment at peace, fully in love with like God's country, and being so removed from all the nonsense and stress of everyday society that even if I had like a bar or two of service, it's almost like you're just spending time getting to know each other. You're sharing stories. And most of these guys want to know where I've been to, like they ask about all the other ranches I've been on. And, there was a good point. There's a buddy of mine, his name's Brew, but he worked at the Sixes. And when him and I, first met, and he kind of knew all the ranches I've been out to, he's like, the crazy thing is that you've been on more ranches than most cowboys will their whole life. Yeah. And I thought that was kind of crazy, but I almost thought like it was undeserving. Like I felt kind of like weird about it, because I was like, I don't deserve that. Like I feel like these cowboys should be rotating and move along. But the reality is that ranches could really benefit, guys staying there full time, because cowboys are coming and going so fast. And you get the kind of the younger generation that's like 18 to 23, 24 that want a cowboy because it's cool, and they do it for a couple years and then they give it up and go get a city job that pays more. So it's really not for the weak. It's kind of more so like, you're either a lifer because your family did it and you don't care about the money or the stress or the tax on your body. It's
also sometimes their only skill set, truthfully.
That's it.
Yeah.
And so the reality is that every ranch could use people to stay on as long as possible, as long as they're good hands.
Yeah.
But I've been blessed to know that, like, as Bruce said, that I've been able to make my way to all these different places and seen more country than most people, which I always try to remind myself of that too, which is always nice in that moment.
Yeah, what a blessing to get to like a forced disconnect.
Yep.
Truly. I wish they would cut the internet off every Sunday. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And everybody just had to sit there and be present with one another. It's like almost like sickening how unconnected. I remember the world before like
I do
smartphones.
Yeah.
And I can't express how different and like in a better way.
Yeah.
Like how much more fun it was, how much less depression. Like people still had depression, but it wasn't like it is now. People still had anxiety, not like now.
Okay, so for kids, are you gonna try to raise them in that way?
Good question. We are. So my wife, Belle, and I, after my time, on almost 8 years of photographing this lifestyle, it reminded me of how I grew up. Like I grew up very small family. Mom and dad didn't like really have any money, but like we had each other, so it was one of those things where it was like, we lifted each other up. We played board games growing up. We kind of stayed away from the TV as much as we could. And I think in this kind of modern day age is that I don't want to shame any parents, because I'm not a parent, so I don't know what it's like to raise kids yet, but I just see so many kids that are glued to a screen. And then I go out to ranches and I see how well behaved those kids are, where you've got 3 and 4 year olds like doing dishes and they're yes, sir, yes, ma'am. And they show you respect and they're outside playing all day. And I think Belle and I have seen that enough to where we're like, we kind of need more of that in our world.
Mm-hmm.
And so we both have agreed to like raise our kids a little bit traditional. They're probably going to hate us for it a little bit, but we believe
Yeah.
if we put them around neighbors that are like that mentality, if we can live kind of more out in the country, you know, an hour or two outside of a city, we don't want to stunt them from, you know, technology. Obviously they need to be involved in it somehow,
Mm-hmm.
but if we can balance that and maybe do it like once a day, like on a weekend or something where they get some screen time.
I mean, I didn't get an iPhone, I think, till high school.
Same.
And I, you know, was very angry with my mother. She was very, like, against screens. So I was angry with her, but I now am really thankful. And I'm not behind in technology at all.
No.
You know?
Kids' brains come
Yeah.
absolutely pre-wired for it. They pick it up like it's breathing air. It's actually a little scary
Yeah.
how quickly they can just pick. It's wild. So you don't need to worry about them being behind
Yeah.
in technology at all.
Yeah.
That is a
But
good point.
Yeah, I will tell you though, like you're only the weakest link in the friend group though. Like the friend who has all the stuff, all the
Yeah.
friends want to go over to there, and
Yeah.
there will be one. You know
I
what
know,
I
and
mean?
that's
It's tough.
that's a struggle that we know that we're gonna have to face. That you know
Yeah.
we can't really. You don't want to be the parent that controls who they're friends with. You know, you want to put them around good examples and good kids, and make sure you know who their family is and their parents. You know, like that's what my parents did. Is they'd call the families down the road and
Right.
say, "Hi, we're Beau's parents. We just want to get to know you and know whose house he's at every day."
Right.
So we're going to be traditional in that regard. You know, we want to know who's teaching our kids in school.
Yeah.
If we are going to put them through a public school, we've talked about homeschooling, but there's all kinds of things that I think we've made our mind up on just by seeing how well these kids are raised on these ranches. And I think we want to kind of follow that tradition a little bit.
Right.
You know, get some animals. Like, it sounds funny, but like I would love to raise sheep.
I love sheep.
I
They're
want to
so
have a few
cute.
horses. We're going to have the typical chicken coop. My wife's in her sourdough phase,
Yeah.
you know, so
there
it's
were
like,
baby ducks at
My
Tractor Supply the
sourdough.
other day, and I love baby ducks.
yeah. So I think we'll have all the little animals. And I think that's good to teach kids young on like what that looks like when there's death involved in animals and
Oh, yes.
how to learn all that.
I had a question. How do you think growing up on a ranch and seeing animals dying and extreme weather conditions, like how does that shape a person and their like mental ability to handle?
So the funny scenario is like, so like I didn't grow up in it. I didn't see all that. Like I grew up on just a plot of dirt in the middle of the desert where we still had some of that, but it wasn't like a ranch or anything like that. But now that I see it, and then I come home and like some of these images I share, you know, because I don't want people to romance cowboys in the Western lifestyle. I don't want it to portray as like it's always this beautiful thing.
Yeah.
It's not. There's a lot of ugly and there's a lot of death and there's a lot of things that happen where, I mean, unfortunately, I've seen calves' heads get squeezed in a chute on accident because another calf behind it bumped them too early as they were shutting the chute.
Damn.
And then you got this lifeless calf there that you now have to put everything on pause and drag it out. And everyone's pissed because you just cost a life of an animal. And then, you know, just out in Montana, like 3 weeks ago, you know, I'm riding along. I see vultures. I see coyotes messing with a mom. I go out there. There's a calf that's been stripped, nothing but its head and its spine. And it died like
Damn.
maybe hours prior.
God.
And it's one of those things where I think it just reminds you on we think we are obviously the superior race and the superior, you know, species on this planet, but you realize how short life is. And when you see things like that, you also see the beauty in it though of families that teach their kids of like, hey, maybe they had a pet bunny or maybe they had a barn cat
Yeah.
that passed away or a dog. You know, lots of ranch dogs I know don't make it past 3 or 4 years.
No,
Like
I
they're
know.
always dying.
Growing up, I mean, we didn't have like a ranch, but we had like 9 acres and we had a whole bunch of dogs, like goats, chickens, horses, and like, yeah, our dogs would die or they would run away. My chickens, I had so many sets of chickens and they would die. So I always like, I thought something was wrong with me because I was like so able to handle the death of animals. But now, like the thought of Odin, my dogs dying, like I'm so close to them.
Yeah.
Like that would really rock me.
I feel like cowboys just they have like a different relationship with death, almost like it's more okay,
Yeah.
like more accepting of it. Same thing with I'd say firefighters, maybe military vet, people who have
Yeah.
seen, the more death you see, the more you accept it as like, you're not in denial about that being the end point for all of us. Like there's less, I don't know many cowboys with anxiety, I'll say.
No, and I think it's also based on their surroundings.
Yeah.
That reduces that. I truly believe that like social media and everyday society is the number one cause of like mental health and anxiety.
100%.
And I think that when you're so far removed and you really have like only a few gears, you know, where it's like, hey, wake up, go check animals, work, come home, make dinner, give the kids a bath, put them to bed. Like when you operate that way and you're kind of living a more traditional life, I'm not going to say there's less stress or there's less going on, but you've now simplified life to where I think that's how it's meant to be lived and how it's meant to be shared with others. And I think that, like you, Ella, I grew up always thinking like, what's wrong with me? I don't accept death, because there was kids dying in high school, like friends of mine, and I was never like crying. I was always just unfazed by it. Even when my own grandmother died, it took me like a month to actually like cry and break down from it in my own time to like really let it set in. And I think, you know, even now as an adult, like, you know, those hurricanes that happened in North Carolina, I found a body when I was up there.
Oh, wow.
I've, you know, seen all kinds of just brutal stuff on ranches, off ranches, to where I think it's not necessarily like cowboys. You know, some people think cowboys are emotionless. I would argue that cowboys are probably very in tune with their emotions. They just know how to use them properly, and they know when the appropriate time to show their emotions is. And I think that when there's time to like work and there's time when there's things that need to get done, they kind of just decompartmentalize it a little bit and then, you know, deal with it later on. And I think it's the same mentality as like military. You know, a lot of my friends that have been overseas and have fought, you know, in war have come back home and have left it over there.
Yeah, well, we were talking about this last episode. We were talking about men and how they are very sensitive. And like Lacey has a little son, and she sees how sensitive he is and how things affect him. Are you sensitive?
So I'll speak for my wife on this, where I was always told in prior relationships that I was like too emotionless. I didn't show enough emotion. And in my mind, I'm thinking like, well, yeah, I'm a man. And I was happy with that. But I realized that there were some women that needed to see more. Bella's kind of brought up a good point where she's like, there are certain things that like don't phase you at all. There's certain things you're very persistent. You're a very aggressive, hard personality sometimes. But the one thing that I love about you that she sees is she's like animals and kids. She's like, that's your soft spot. She's like, when I see how tender you are with babies and children and how caring you are when you come across a dead animal, how you bury it and say a prayer over it and like do those things. She's like, that's where I know you kind of have that soft spot inside of you. So I think there's just certain things to where I have, I guess you'd say like more of a heart towards, where it's other things where if it's like, you know, getting something done and people are like freaking out and stressing about it, I just don't understand. Like, I don't want to put shade on like men nowadays, but I just think that like men have it so easy nowadays and they complain a little too much over things when it's like,
yeah, no, it's interesting because I was listening to some other podcasts you were on and you describe yourself as being a traditional male. What does that mean to you? Good
question.
Yeah.
I think a traditional man is somebody who takes care of those around him, who doesn't put anyone down in the process of doing so. Somebody that puts others' hearts and their well-being first ahead of theirs. Somebody that puts God ahead of everybody else, including himself. And somebody that really can look out for benefiting others' futures, whether it's putting food on a table or helping out around the house. You know, just having that simple mindset of, I want to provide, I want to take care of people. I'm not going to complain or get angry in certain situations. And I say that as somebody who's guilty of getting road rage from now and then. But I think it's one of those like phrases where I look at my father and I look at other men who were maybe they weren't emotionless, but they just knew how to handle their emotions. They knew when to use them. They knew how to take care of others. They knew when it was time to put fear in your eyes and then come back around an hour later and show you love. And I think that was to me like a traditional man that was masculine, that didn't need to like demand respect. You know, it was just kind of granted. based on his presence. And so I think that it's one of those topics that are very delicate nowadays to get into, but I think that there's a lot of people, both male and female, that get so offended by that. And I don't understand why. I think there's every type of man for every type of woman, and there's every type of woman for every type of man. But I think there's a place where men can be a little bit more traditional in today's day and age and learn how to kind of just, I guess, suck it up, lack of a better term, and kind of just put on your boots and deal with things, and then be open and vocal and not like hold everything in all the time.
We were talking on our last episode about how it's only really been in the last 75 years that women have like I hate spiders.
Get another mosquito?
It was a spider. Sorry, I'm allergic to them. Oh, no. So it's not gonna bite me. But about how like in the last 75 years it's been the only point probably in history, with obviously small exceptions, that women have been able to support themselves and buy their own home, have a credit card in their name, all of that stuff. And obviously women have like taken that ball and run with it, as we were kind of instructed to do for a long time. But then that leaves men with their typical role that they were used to, like not necessarily being there in the same way that it historically has. And I think men and women are really trying to find this new balance of what our roles are in a world where your wife could end up making more money than you, being the breadwinner, whatever, or you know what I mean? Or she might very well want to stay home and raise the kids. And like, but I feel like men are kind of having to be on the defense. Like, where do you want me in this picture?
Yeah.
What is my purpose now?
They're told, like, take the lead, but also
let her take the lead if she wants it.
You know, like,
No,
a lot of
I
mixed
agree.
messaging.
I think to your point is we are in that weird time right now where it's like you said, like you have kind of, you had the feminist movement that kind of went like to an all-time high where, and I agree, there was things where, women wanted fair treatment in the workplace. Some women wanted to kind of be, like you said, like the breadwinner, or they wanted to like grow a business, or they wanted to do something that was, outside of just being a mother. There's a lot of women that
or the man didn't step up and she was forced to do that.
Correct. There's that too.
Yeah.
And I think there's this weird thing now where the roles have almost reversed that I've heard in the dating world. I haven't dated for a while, but from what I've seen from friends of mine that are still in that world is that you're seeing men that don't want to get married and don't want to date. And it's almost forced women to now pursue men in certain spaces. And I think that I'm speaking from a traditional man, and I don't mean to put anybody down, but I look at it as it's always been natural and normal for a man to somewhat provide because he feels masculine and it puts him in a masculine place. So when you flip the roles, and I'm not saying women can't have jobs or they can't make more than men. I know plenty of families where there's masculine father figures that their wives make more, but the wife has a balance of managing a business and whatnot and being at home with the family. But I think that when it's more of a mentality shift of where women kind of put on the traditional pants per se and then want to go out and kind of date. It's almost the men feel like they need to like be the feminine one. And it's just not the natural role of things, where you kind of see men struggling with that because they feel like they're undervalued or they feel like they're being put down. And it's probably not the case, but it's just that natural thing.
What is putting them down? Because the woman is able to provide? Or
I think it's not so much the woman's able to provide. There's just some people out there, male or female, we'll say females in this perspective, that maybe make that man feel less than.
Because traditionally a man's value is doing that.
It's
like
through his
providing,
work.
is opening the door for a woman, is like buying the dinner. And if you don't allow him that, it like, to him, his value is decreasing.
But how are you not allowing him to do that?
So because, I mean, for the whole like feminist movement that came about, there was a lot of women that were like saying, don't open the door, I can open my own door.
Yeah.
For instance. Or it was saying like, hey, like there was women that would go on dates and they would say, I don't understand. Why am I not getting a man? I make $200,000 a year. The reality, I'm going to say this for every woman listening. A man does not care how much money you make.
Yeah, no.
I could not care less if my wife worked at Starbucks. If she was in love with what she does, or if she was like designing things at home and selling them, or she was working at like a retail job, as long as I knew that she was like, hey, I enjoy what I do and it keeps me busy and it's like my escape from home, I would totally support her.
I feel like that's not true in the reverse.
It's not.
Would you? I mean, would you care if Noah just worked at Starbucks? I mean, no, because so much of what he is what he does. Like same with my husband. So
Not to
much of
put
what
down
he
Starbucks,
is,
Phil, because that was my very first job.
Damn it. I don't feel bad for saying that now. But like, so I don't know. Like if my husband, like so much of his cowboyness is what attracted me to him in the first place. You know what I mean?
I'm thinking like an accountant. That doesn't draw me in, really. Like I work in a creative field. I'm very creative, so I think I naturally gravitate towards creative people.
Right.
But even like just saying like, does his financial status, I think financial status matters more to women about their partner than it does to men.
Yeah.
You don't think so?
I think, love you Noah, I think I made more than Noah when I first met him. When I first started
feel like
dating.
it gets more important as you get older though. Like in my 20s, I definitely wasn't thinking how much does he make.
Yeah. And this is kind of
sorry, real quick. Being on... Like I'm on my upward journey in my career, and he was as well when I met him.
Yeah.
So I think that's like more important, like being like working towards something together.
We both were growing, and that was Belle and I when we first met. I was nowhere near where I am today when we met, 4.5 years ago. But I think, when women really find somebody that they are attracted to, they understand that that man is growing. Like maybe he's working towards something. And I think that ambition is what keeps that it just keeps women involved in like keeping in check with like men in a sense. Is like, as long as my man is working towards something and he's motivated and he's trying, then that's an attractive quality.
Yeah.
It's where anybody becomes complacent, male or female, when they're just kind of not doing anything. They're in between phase. And I think men feel lost to where they might have a good job, and then they feel like if they get fired, the woman's going to leave them because there's not a lot of women that will just wait around for a man to kind of recuperate and find that again. And like everything that I'm speaking is not like a factual, like, hey, this is how it is. Everything is different. The dating life is different now.
We all have our perception of the world that is formed by our own experiences.
Right. Yeah, and I'm kind of just speaking on more the terms of like a traditional relationship where a woman is in her femininity and allows a man to be in his masculinity. And it's almost like, I think on the women's side, they can get offended by thinking if I say femininity, that means you have to be at home cleaning the house, doing dishes, cooking food, watching the kids. It's not that. It's that you can have a job and hustle and have your own career, but still allow your man to do the things that take care of you, of like opening a door or taking the lead.
Wait, I kind of want to get Noah's opinion on this because I feel like Noah is a bit more like of a modern man.
In what way?